Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of Power Dynamics for Life. I'm Dr. Aisha Haynes-Belizaire, and today's topic is Overturning Roe versus Wade and the Unintended Consequences for Women's Health and Safety. This video is for educational purposes, and we will be discussing women's bodies and domestic violence. So I want to start off by saying I want to be very respectful of this topic. I have friends and colleagues on both sides of this issue. And one thing that I want my pro-life friends to understand is that everybody who believes that a woman has a right to choose is not pro-abortion and not pro-abortion to the very end. And I want my pro-choice friends to understand that everybody that is pro-life is not anti-woman. So let's just go ahead and go into the case of Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973 by the United States Supreme Court. And prior to this decision, women were dying across the country from having illegal abortions. Abortions were illegal in a lot of states, in many states. And women would be going to have back alley abortions, and they would have all kinds of things inserted into them to make them in their pregnancies. And so it was decided that since this was going to be something that was going to happen anyway, that it might as well happen in a medical facility. Well, this case that came up that was Dobbs versus Jackson, and that was the Mississippi case that was decided, and it was challenging Roe versus Wade, but first challenging to limit abortion to 15 weeks. And most people said that, that probably might have been the best decision to do instead of completely overturning Roe versus Wade. Even the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was making that suggestion because it would give something to both sides. It would shorten the time that you could have an abortion, and so that would satisfy pro-life people, and then on the pro-choice side, it would actually give a woman enough time to know that she was pregnant and to get an abortion and to have it very early in her pregnancy. But the Supreme Court decided that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And so the decision to uphold the Dobbs case was a 6-3 decision where the Chief Justice sided with the conservative side of the court, and the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade was a 5-4 decision where the Chief Justice decided on the side with the liberal side of the court. And this just had people in the streets all weekend. Women feel like this is taking away their choices and their rights. And, one of the things that made this a very questionable decision at the end was that Justice Clarence Thomas came out and said, well, you know what? Maybe this was decided wrong and we should go back and look at Griswold. And, Griswold versus Connecticut was the Supreme Court case that allowed for contraceptive, birth control to be legal. Because prior to Griswold, to Griswold versus Connecticut, a lot of states, it was illegal to use birth control. And so on one hand, you're telling women you don't want them to have abortions, but on the other hand, you're telling them that you don't want them to use something that keeps them from getting pregnant. And so the question to my mind has to come up, is this really about saving life, or is this really about controlling women? Now, one of the biggest concerns of this is that we have a very conservative court, and they're very strong pro-life conservative court, but that is their religious belief. And is that right to put a religious belief on an entire population of people? In the United States, the First Amendment says that the government will not establish any religion. And when we look at the history, the first story that we all learned about being a U.S. citizen, that we've all learned in school was about the pilgrims on the Mayflower coming over here so they could have religious freedom. And so this is also very questionable. Another thing that makes this an extreme case is that it is left up to the states to whether or not they want to have exceptions for rape, incest, or the life of the mother. And some of the states are like, no, we're not going to do that. And so right now, and this has been rolling like wildfire, there are now, I believe it's 12 states that have trigger laws that have now outlawed abortion, and it is now day by day is expected to go up to 26 states. And so this will be a very difficult time for women. And it's not just, I want you to know as I go into this topic, it is not just about abortion, but other women health care services. And so let's go ahead and talk about, I want to first say that the research that I used for this came from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists for men, that's the ladies' doctor, okay? And also from the March of Dimes, which is pro-healthy babies, and also from women hospitals, and also from domestic violence organizations. So I have the information in the description box, so I put the links to that so you all can look and check that out for yourself. So I want to first start off by telling you my story. When I got pregnant with my son, I was told that if I continued my pregnancy, I would be putting my life at risk. And I actually almost died in childbirth, and my son almost died. But luckily, he's grown now. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. I love him. He is serving our country. I'm very proud of him. But when I think about that decision, it was my decision. And I don't want anybody else to tell another woman that, you know what, if your life is at risk, you can't make that decision about saving your own life. That was a decision that I made. And so, when we look at these states that don't want to make any exceptions, that is one of the things that they will face. Now, also, this will be tying the hands of some doctors. And when you look at the case that's in Texas right now, where they have been basically for the last couple of months been having restrictions on abortions where you can actually sue somebody, track somebody down, and find out if they're aiding and abetting someone to have an abortion, and they can be sued for $10,000. Doctors are now afraid of performing any type of service on a woman that may be considered an abortion. So I just want to talk about how this impacts miscarriages. Now, 1 out of every 5 pregnancies, according to the March of Dimes, pro-healthy baby, will end in miscarriage. And these are within the first 20 weeks of pregnancy. And according to the Winnie Palmer Hospital for Women and Babies, which is an award-winning hospital, 1 in 4 pregnancies will not make it, will not end in a live birth. And so miscarriage is very common, and most women that I have talked to have had a miscarriage. And so when a woman goes in and she's had a miscarriage, or the baby has died inside the womb, they need for whatever has not come out to be taken out, to be cleared out, their womb to be cleared out. And that procedure is called a D&C, and sometimes it's called a D&E. And now doctors are afraid to perform that surgery. They have to wait to the woman, when they talk about the woman's life, doctors are admitting in Texas, because this has already been going on in Texas, these restrictions, that they have admitted, an article in the Texas Tribune, that they have actually delayed care because of fear. And they are sending these women home to fall into a state of being so ill that their life is truly on the line, and they have developed sepsis, where their body has become infected and toxic, or they have gone into other type of situations like types of organ failure and life in life-threatening situations. Also, look at the fact that in some states this will become a felony, and so abortions will become a felony. So when women have miscarriages and they come into the hospital, they are open now to investigations. And somebody can ask, well, is it really a miscarriage, or did you just have a botched abortion? And who is going to make that decision as to whether or not that's true? And then also you need to take into consideration there are a lot of medications that people take, like some blood pressure medications, some diabetic medications, something as simple as Motrin and Advil, that is for headaches and backaches. All of those medications, if you take them when you're pregnant, they can harm a fetus and they can put you in a state of having a miscarriage. And a lot of times women may not know they're pregnant for a while. You may be on birth control and still get pregnant, because no, birth control is 100% effective. And this will also impact women who have IVF, and that's in vitro fertilization, because in some states they will say that the embryo is a person, and so therefore you cannot freeze an embryo for when you want to go ahead and have it implanted. And this is for people who very much want children. And so this is going to be a big problem. Birth control like IUDs and the morning after pill, which, because a lot of men don't understand women's bodies, they don't understand that that is not an abortion, but the IUD keeps the egg from being implanted in the morning after pill keeps the sperm and the egg from meeting. Now, I want to go on and talk about another issue, which is domestic violence. And these statistics came from domestic violence organizations, but the number one cause of death for pregnant women is homicide. Think about that for a minute. Homicide. Then think about that 1 out of every 6 women, the first time that they have ever been abused in a relationship is usually when they first became pregnant. 1 out of every 5 women has been the victim of rape or an attempted rape. And out of that 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 3, this has happened to them before they were 17 years old. So what do you tell the little girl who is 12, 13 years old that this has happened to, and she now is told that she has to be victimized again and carry the baby of that person who violated her? Is that fair? What does that do to her mental health for the rest of her life? Also, let's talk about the fact that a lot of times men will sabotage women's birth control because they don't want them to leave. And it is very hard when you have a lot of children to be able to leave a domestic violence situation. Also, I want to tell you the story of a student I had. I had a student, and I think he was maybe around 19, 20 years old, and he was coming in for his academic advisement. And, a lot of students would confide in me, and, you'd be amazed at the stuff I've heard. But he went on to tell me he was very angry, and he went on to tell me that he had gotten a woman pregnant and she wouldn't have an abortion. And I told him, well, you can't make a woman have an abortion if she don't want to have one. And he said that this woman was not acceptable to his family and that she was of a lower class and she was not going to have his baby. And I said to him, well, you know what? You can't stop if that's her choice, that's her choice. And he kind of said under his breath, like, well, if she get beat up, that ain't going to be her choice. And I said, how dare you? How dare you threaten to beat up this woman because she will not have an abortion? She was good enough to lay down with, so she should be good enough to have your child because that is the decision that you made. And so, these things need to be considered. One of the highest, being pregnant is a very vulnerable state. And I want these legislators to understand this, that women will continue to have abortions, but they will not be safe abortions. And so let's look at this. What can be done now? Okay, legislators, we need to have support for women. They need to be able to have health care. They need to be able to have assistance with childcare. We need to have free pre-K. We need to do a lot of things to support families if you want women to have children. Also, in your state legislature, make sure that there are exceptions for the life of the mother. Make sure that there are exceptions for rape victims. So I just want to say, I thank you so much for joining me here today. People, get active. Do what you know that you need to do. This is Power Dynamics for Life. I'm Dr. Aisha Haynes-Belizaire. I will see you next week. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.